Hello everybody, I'm Alyssa from Meditative Astrology. Today we're going to talk about the astrology of November 16th through 22nd. We have a lot to get through this week. We have Mercury re-entering the sign of Scorpio, we have a new moon in the sign of Scorpio, a Mercury Cazimi in the sign of Scorpio. So yeah, we got a lot to get into. If you haven't already, follow, subscribe here on the YouTube channel so that way you don't miss these weekly videos. You don't miss our weekly meditations that we have Sunday nights, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Those are live streamed right here to YouTube. You can check out the past ones if you want a little glimpse into what that's like. If you follow on social media, Facebook, Instagram, then you'll see all of the miscellaneous posts, announcements, everything like that. All the communications go there. As well as the weekly intentions. Those are released Friday nights. They are astrologically guided, so you can have them ahead of looking at the weekly video like this one, and certainly ahead of the live meditation where we meet together after you've had some time to contemplate on the astrology on your own. So a plethora of ways to create relationships with what's going on in the sky and really bring it down to a personal level. Creating conversations. That is what this is all about here, and my focus here at Meditative Astrology. So let's go ahead and get right into it. We start off the week right away on Sunday with the sun entering the Grand Water Trine that we've been talking about. So the sun is going to trine both Jupiter in the sign of Cancer and Saturn in the sign of Pisces. We've talked a lot about this Grand Water Trine throughout the fall here. Mercury and Mars have already both went through this. Mercury is going to come back into that water trine at the end of the week and the beginning of next week here. So there's a lot of water. So the water houses in your chart probably have been pretty active. We've talked about the water trine dealing with the things that water represents. So it represents emotions, it represents connections, it represents our origins. And so within our origins, you can get ancestry, you can get our own personal history and experiences. You get the memory body, so our conscious memories as well as our subconscious or unconscious memories, the programmings and the conditionings that come along with it. Our deep emotional connections to the world, to our beliefs, to other people. All of these type of things are found within the water signs. When we have the sun coming into this trine, we could break this aspect down by looking at Sun and Saturn. We could break it down by looking at Sun and Jupiter, but really looking at it as a whole, since we've been in this experience for a while, I feel like is the best way to approach this at this point here. So when the solar expression enters this Grand Water Trine and enters this space of interacting with the water, where we've already had some interaction, right? We've had Mercury move through there. That's our mind, that's our communications, that's the way we perceive, the way other people talk to us, and the way other people perceive the way we communicate with them. The tools and the resources, right? The patterns that and habits that we have, those are all mercurial type things. So Mercury has been through there. Mars has been through there. Our motivations, our drives, our ambition, what lights us up, what fires us, right? What stimulates our mind and what stimulates our movements and our motivations have already went through this space. Mercury's going to move back through there. But just before Mercury does, the sun moves in. When I think about our drives and our motivations, Mars moving through there. When I think about our mental space as well as our movable, changeable space moving through this, the personal planets, the ones that are deeply related to the personal parts of our lives coming through, and then the sun coming through. I think about an illumination of a process that has been going on here. I think about a process being prompted mentally, as well as creating some sort of movement, some sort of motivations where things start to kind of shift, the water starts to turn a little bit. Maybe it was kind of like a still lake and now there's ripples in the water, things are moving a little bit, and now the sun comes through. So now our soul level, our purpose, our path comes through there. There's this outward expression of the emotions, of the connections and the origins that have been reached into, the conditionings maybe that have been reached into. There could be an illumination of some sort of ancestral karma for us, those conditionings that we have and the other things that we have inherited. Those can be beneficial or not, depending on what they are. And, we can get wisdom right? We can get knowledge, we can get insights that can come. We can get protection from our ancestors, right? We can get understandings and deep felt connections coming through here. So really, if something has been started to stir, if something has been moving just a little bit, the main way that I see the sun coming through here, and this is all pinging from the sign of Scorpio, right? So it's coming from this deep, watery, emotional type space. Now there's maybe a desire to have things come into a little bit more outward expression, right? To feel them on a soul level, to feel the purpose to start to pull through there. That's what I feel with the sun coming through this Grand Water Trine, and it's just days above Mercury re-entering the sign of Scorpio as well. So this is really where we start the week here. As the sun comes through and starts to illuminate this Grand Water Trine, I'm thinking about the structures and the forms that come in and out of being here, right? The sun represents that eternal, unchanging level of life. So that's where you get soul, you get purpose, you get path. Versus the moon's light is always changing, right? So you get things like the environment, you get things like mood and emotion and the experiences of life where, maybe the sun represents our greater philosophical beliefs, where the moon represents our experiences that formulate into our beliefs, things like that. Jupiter represents systems that unite, and Saturn can represent a container for those systems or a container for forms. So I'm thinking about the forms that are coming into being, coming into a space of solidness, a space of creation, and things coming into form. This is where I say, like, if something started to kind of ping a little bit and started to, there were little ripples that started to formulate within the water, then now maybe you start to see some waves where things start to move a little bit more here. Saturn represents that container for forms, but it can also represent impermanence, right? Death, decay, things falling away. So I'm thinking about forms coming in and out of being with the sun interacting with Jupiter, those structures that unite, that bring things together, as well as Saturn that can represent death and decay and things starting to kind of shift and seeing that things aren't permanent. Things aren't always, nothing lasts forever, right? Everything has a beginning and an end or a moving into the next phase or into the next chapter. Something kind of like that. So really starting off this week with feeling things really deeply and feeling the pull, right? As we come into the beginning of the week here. So that's what we have coming through Sunday. Now that Grand Water Trine will take us into Monday, but really it starts building through the weekend, Saturday into Sunday, and into the beginning of the week here as well. So then if we go ahead and walk forward into Monday, we still have that water trine that is active, but we also have a quick sextile coming through between Mercury and Pluto here. Moon starts out in the sign of Libra, and then it moves into the sign of Scorpio. This sextile with Pluto and Mercury, it can be quick, it can be subtle, it can be something that could be missed, but given with where Mercury is in its retrograde period, it's about to cross sign barriers from Mercury or from Sagittarius back into the sign of Scorpio. It's about to go through the Cazimi. It feels like there is an ability for this to be a bit more intense than a quick sextile could be. It can be empowering, it can be enlivening, it can be something that makes you have a little bit of courage or a little bit of ability to step outside of the box, do something maybe a little bit different, right? Maybe you're reaching deep down to find some sort of strength. It can have a little bit of intensity that can come along with it. It can have something that makes us feel like we need to move, we need to do something a little bit different, right? You have that death and transformation that comes along with Pluto, but the transformation that comes from things falling apart before you're able to put them back together. But really, I see this as an ability to feel empowered. It's Mercury, so there could be that intensifying, penetrating, that digging deep down energy within the mental realm. So maybe we're able to think critically. Maybe we're able to problem solve. Maybe we have a little bit of courage or a little extra, feeling a little extra powerful to be able to move in a certain specific type of way. So I think that's a quick, subtle, but helpful aspect that we have coming through Monday. If we go ahead and move forward into Tuesday here, we have a couple aspects that are happening here as well. Mercury is going to re-enter the sign of Scorpio. As it does, it's going to oppose Uranus at 29 degrees of Taurus. It's going to make a trine with Neptune at 29 degrees of Pisces. And it's going to start setting us up for the new moon that we have coming through here. It's going to set us up for the Mercury retrograde. There's a huge resetting coming in this week for the sign of Scorpio and the house topics and where that is represented within your own life. So Mercury is retrograding back into Scorpio, right? It's coming back because there must have been something. There's something that was left behind. There's something that needs to be redone. And the house topics, where you can find Scorpio and Sagittarius, those are probably interconnected right now. So take a look at that. And if you want to do a reading together in order to find that out, we can have a conversation about it too. So re-entering that water, feminine water sign of Mars, right? That deep intensity, that place where we are exploring emotions and we're looking to them a little bit deeper. It moved forward into the sign of Sagittarius after it maybe started to explore that depth, exploring the emotions and exploring the excavation that can be found in the sign of Scorpio. Mars and Mercury conjoined in the sign of Scorpio, and maybe there were some things that started to be uncovered, right? Mercury moved into the sign of Sagittarius, the place of Jupiter, which is also retrograde now. Went retrograde right about the same time Mercury did. We talked about that last week's video. Mercury moved forward into the sign of Sagittarius, the place of Jupiter, the place of knowledge, the place of wisdom, the place of experience and wanting to learn, wanting to bring in more. Living like this is our last days, right? Being able to fully experience everything. So maybe something was uncovered when Mercury was originally in Scorpio. Maybe there was some sort of depth that started to be explored. That doesn't mean it has to be bad. It just means that maybe we see something a little bit differently, or we start to explore something a little bit deeper, something kind of like that. Moved into the sign of Sagittarius, maybe there was some sort of understanding, some sort of insight, some sort of knowing, or some sort of optimistic understanding that came through here, right? Something that broadened our horizons, broadened our perspective a little bit, maybe gave us a little bit of a boost even. Now Mercury retrogrades back into the sign of Scorpio. So now that we've gotten that little boost or that little insight, now it's time to go back to that deep space, right? It's time to go back, recalculate, reconfigure, and reset here. So where have these emotions and these deeper connections started to be uncovered? Are there things that we realize we need to process? Are there things that we need to start to sort through? Where has there been that keen sense of focus within your life, right? There is a deep commitment and investment in investigating and excavating things. Scorpio likes to look in the nooks and crannies. It does not leave any of those little dark spaces that some of us might avoid. Scorpio likes to dig down into those spaces, maybe even a little bit obsessively, but commitment is a much more positive word rather than obsessive here. So as it does so, it's going to oppose Uranus here. We had this this opposition at the end of October. However, it was across the Sagittarius and Gemini axis because it was right before Uranus moved from Gemini into the sign of Taurus. So now we have the same opposition coming back through the retrograde. However, there's different house topics, and there's a shift in the symbolism through the different house topics and the different houses that it's happening in, right? So we were looking across the Sagittarius-Gemini axis. Now we're looking across the Scorpio-Taurus axis. So that shifts where the breakthrough is. That shifts where the enlightenment starts to come through. Maybe these two house topics, which are adjacent to each other, and in a way they flow and they connect to each other in some way, depending on where they're located. But that desire to break through, that desire to do something a little bit different mentally, think a little bit differently, bring in different resources, change our habits, do something a little bit different. It might be felt a little bit deeper here, right? Because we're in the sign of Scorpio. We might be looking for it in a physical, tangible way with Uranus back in the sign of Taurus. You know, maybe there's something that isn't working. Maybe we need to figure out a different way. Maybe we need to be a little bit creative in the way that we figure out to do something a little bit different. With Mercury coming into these resetting moments that I briefly mentioned, I think the opposition to Uranus gives us an empowering moment of courage, right? So like, if you're going to liberate from something, if you're going to rebel against something, you know, these are those Uranus keywords, right? If you're going to break free from something, you have to have the courage to do so. You have to feel like you have some sort of strength within you. You know, maybe it comes from having enough. Maybe it comes from being fed up. Maybe it feels like it's out of the place of survival. Maybe it's out of a place of, you know, wanting to step up the next ladder, the next level of stairs of wherever it's playing out, wherever it is for you. But there has to be a courage. There has to be the feeling of the ability to lift yourself up and move a little bit higher here. At the same time, Mercury is trining Neptune. So if Mercury and Uranus is allowing us to break open our brain somehow and brainstorm and see things a little bit differently and maybe move in a little different way, maybe speak a little bit differently. The trine to Neptune could really open that up too with a level of mental exploration. I think both the aspect to Neptune and Uranus can both be incredibly creative. You know, maybe we need to feel re-inspired somehow, right? Maybe we need to feel connected to something. With the trine to Neptune, there is a possibility of some sort of miscommunication with Uranus. There's the possibility of, you know, maybe stepping too far outside of the box or like crossing some sort of line. Since Mercury is coming back into this aspect with both of these planets through the retrograde, it's possible that either the first time Mercury came across both of these planets that we had one of those mishaps that kind of happened, and now we're able to like notice that and come back, and now we start to kind of reassess it. Or maybe something felt like it was the right move. Maybe it felt like something was clear, but really the clarity wasn't quite there. Maybe now, as Mercury is coming back through the retrograde process, maybe now we realize, oh, the way I tried to individuate didn't quite come out the way I expected it to, or you know, that thing that I thought was inspiring me, it doesn't feel quite so good now. It feels like it was a little bit excessive or something like that. Both of those are possibilities here. Either, you know, kind of that misleadingness now through the retrograde, or that kind of was the case and now we're starting to kind of have that realization. With the retrograde, you get the 3 passes. So we still will get one more pass of these aspects that Mercury is making here. With Mercury too, I wonder, Mercury and Neptune coming in, I wonder about the magic that we're inviting, right? Both Neptune and Mercury, in my mind, can be associated with magic. Uranus can be too, because Uranus is associated with Prometheus, the god that stole the fire from the gods and brought it to mankind in the form of technology, information, enlightenment. That probably, those type of things first kind of seem like magic, right? Like, I don't know, maybe the first time that a fire was started, whenever that was, you know, it might have seemed like it was magic at first. Or like, if you went back, you know, however many hundreds of years and brought the technology that we have now, it would seem like sorcery. It would seem like magic in some ways. But Mercury is the magician, right? It's the one that brings in things from the other realms. It crosses the barrier between the material world and the spiritual world more than any other planet. It's the guider of souls, so it moves back and forth there. And Neptune has otherworldly connections as well. So I'm wondering about what kind of magic can kind of be re-inspired or reignited. I'm using the re-words, of course, because of the retrograde here. So that's kind of interesting coming through here coming through here Tuesday and coming through right before these resets too. It really feels like it lifts up and it kind of amplifies here a little bit. So that's Tuesday. If we go forward into Wednesday, we don't have any exact aspects over here, so we're going to follow the moon. It's through the middle of Scorpio here, so really we're just setting ourselves up for that new moon that is coming through on Thursday that we're going to talk about. So let's go ahead and jump right into that because that's really our big one of the week here. The new moon happens at 28 degrees of Scorpio at, I have 1:45 a.m. Eastern time on Thursday. The Mercury Cazimi comes through about 4:15 a.m. Eastern time. Translate to your own time zone. So you see we only have a few hours between the new moon and the Mercury Cazimi. So essentially, Sun, Moon, and Mercury are all sitting at the same degree. If I go ahead and pull the chart up here so that way you can see that, and I'm going to go ahead and roll it forward here. If you give me just a minute, we'll bring it forward into Thursday, and then we're going to go ahead and, back up the time here quite a bit. We're just going to go ahead and set it for 2 a.m. Okay, 2 a.m. Eastern time. Yeah, so if you look in the third house in this chart, you can see that we have Venus, Sun, Moon, and Mercury all in the sign of Scorpio. You can see that Sun, Moon, and Mercury are all sitting at 28 degrees. If you look directly opposite, in this chart, going from the third house into the ninth house, you'll see that that new moon and the Mercury Cazimi are in opposition to Uranus. So that wanting to do something different, that wanting to break through energy, that Uranian energy is built into this lunar cycle that we have coming up here. Scorpio has been the activation of this Grand Water Trine that has been coming through as these personal planets move through, right? We already talked about Mercury, Mars, and the Sun coming through this space here. So we've had this activation within the sign of Scorpio, within wherever that is within our chart, through October, through November, and into December here. So with whatever has been stirred up here, whatever has been moving, and wherever those ripples have been coming in, now there's a seeding moment. There's probably a deep-seated initiation in the sign of Scorpio. It's at 28 degrees, so it's at the last couple degrees. There's this level of feeling of finality or things that really need to, we use transformation and death and rebirth with the sign of Scorpio, and it can be a little bit cliche, but at those last couple degrees, it really feels like there's something that is coming into being as we're moving into the new sign, but there's also something that's coming to its fullness, to its fulfillment. Maybe it's served its purpose and now it's going to move on to the next chapter, or it's going to fall away if not needed anymore. This seeding moment can be intuitively, emotionally guided. So maybe we're feeling things really, really deeply. Maybe we're feeling the need to start and initiate something. Maybe it's happening kind of behind the scenes. Scorpio can be a little bit quiet, a little bit secretive, a little bit private. So maybe it's secretive, but maybe it's also just kind of private. Maybe it's inward from the sign of Scorpio, and it's kind of got that quietness of the feminine signs, the water signs too. The water signs can be a little bit more subtle sometimes. But also Jupiter retrograde, right? Jupiter, who's the ruler of where Mercury is retrograde initiated in the sign of Sagittarius, is also retrograde, so that inward focus. Also, the ruler of the new moon, Mars, is in Sagittarius, that sign of Jupiter where Mercury started its retrograde. So you can tie this lunar cycle back to Jupiter in a couple ways as well. I'm wondering about working within the shadows or working with hidden pieces of things that are starting to come up. Maybe we've been collecting little pieces of things, right? And we've been putting them in our pocket. Now we put our hand in our pocket, we pull them out, and we look at them, and we see what we can start to create and initiate. That's something we can do in that behind the scenes, that private sphere, where we're kind of doing it ourselves here. And that Mercury Cazimi coming through. It's initiating a new cycle, a new synodic cycle. Anytime a planet comes into contact with the sun, it's a resetting moment. When Mercury comes into the conjunction with the sun, Mercury Cazimi, from the inferior position, so that's the retrograde conjunction, it takes us from the evening star phase into the morning star phase. So to me, this is the initiation of a new mercurial cycle, because we go from the feminine, the evening star phase, where things are, there's a history, there's experience, there's lessons that have been learned, into the morning star phase, the more maybe masculine or youthful or initiating or stepping into a hopeful pioneering type energy here. So we're starting a new phase. At the same time, we have a new moon starting. At the same space that this Grand Water Trine activation has been activating all of these watery things that we have already been talking about. All of them are up for play. Many people have probably been having some really strong emotions that are washing through them. Maybe we've been having things that have been coming up family-wise. Maybe our connections to people have been coming up. Maybe our intuitive connections to ourselves, to our higher selves, to our environment around us. All of these things are fair game when it comes to the element of water here. So when we are initiating these new cycles at the same time, from the place of Scorpio, a place of depth, a place of going into the nooks and crannies, right? We're digging down deep. We're looking to find something, initiate something that feels like it's not superficial, it's real, it's raw, right? We're trying to step directly into the things. Like we are jumping into the puddle, both feet, right? We don't even care if we got our rain boots on. Opposite Uranus, striving to do something different. Something has to change. Something needs to be broke open. Something needs to be released, right? Kind of like that. All of that is built into this new moon that we have. That youthful morning star phase Mercury that we're going to start to come into, maybe the path isn't quite clear, especially as we're finishing the retrograde, as Mercury is in the morning star phase and it changes from retrograde to direct motion. The path might just start to become a little bit more clear, but we just know that we need to move in a different way. We need to move away from something and maybe move towards something. We just maybe don't know exactly what that thing is. That we need to move towards, but it's deeply felt. It's emotional. There's an intuitive connection that could be there right along with it, right? You can get that from Scorpio, and you can also get that from this Grand Water Trine that we've been getting, and that revolutionary, liberating energy from the opposition to Uranus here. So really, really big resetting moments where Scorpio is in our chart. If you have big Scorpio energy of some kind, you are probably feeling this in some sort of way and have been for the last month or so. So this is the moment where it all starts to come to a seeding moment, right? Things have been moving, things have been swirling. Okay, what are we going to do with it? Where are we going to start? Where are we going to go, right? How are we going to do something a little bit different? Where are we going to not hold ourselves in this box anymore, right? What needs to be liberated? What needs to be let go? What needs to be freed? What needs to be broken open here? And then if we go ahead and move into Friday here, let me go ahead and bring this back up. Thursday into Friday. This is when the sun moves into that exact opposition with Uranus. And then just before it moves into that opposition, just after it moves into that opposition with Uranus, it's going to move into the sign of Sagittarius. Individuation of self, right? The sun, soul, the path that we are on, our purpose, the illumination, what lights us up inside, okay? That opposition to Uranus, it's exactly what we've been talking about here. So now there's an illumination of it that comes through here, right along with the new moon here. And then the sun is going to move into the sign of Sagittarius in the evening. I think it's around 9 p.m. Eastern time. And this brings a level of hopefulness. This brings a level of optimistic belief This brings a level of experience. This can bring a level of redemption. I think about there's nowhere to go but up. Let's only travel up and out. Let's climb the mountain. You know, maybe it can be a little restless. Maybe it can be a little restless and reckless. Maybe it can be a little nihilistic, but that is the space where there's nowhere to go but up. You reach the lowest point and then you start to go a little higher. You see that in the symbolism of the sign of Sagittarius. All of the qualities, all of the significations, everything that each sign represents comes from the place within the solar story that we find, right? We follow the sun through its annual path through the zodiac, starting with the sign of Aries, where it is born in the springtime. And then we follow it through its growth and we follow it through its decay, okay? And those different qualities, the quality of light, however much light there is by the sun, that is where we get the significations of each sign. The sign of Sagittarius is the space within the solar story that is within the darkest part of the year. However, light is about to start to emerge. So we're within the sign of Sagittarius, we are in the darkest part of the year. Dark is strong, dark is abundant. The dark can be unknown. However, 0 Capricorn, the very next sign, the light starts to return, right? We get the winter solstice. And ever so slowly, the light starts to grow. Capricorn starts to climb that mountain towards the light. Back in the sign of Sagittarius, we start in the dark, but we know that light is coming. It's a little ways off, but we know that it's right there. So you get that hopefulness, you get that optimistic, you get that belief. I can see the light. I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I know it's going to be there. I just might not be able to fully see it. So you have to have a belief, right? You have to have ethics, you have to have morals, you have to have all of these Jupiterian type things in order to get yourself to the space where that light is. If you're going from a space of dark to a place of light, that's where we get the quality of being redeemed, right? The light is redeemed. So you get redemption, you get the ability to take yourself from a nihilistic point of view where there's no reason, there's no purpose, to I can see now, I can see the reason, I can see the purpose. This feels, since this happens like literally the day after the new moon, this feels like it's re-emphasizing this process that we've been on, right? Maybe we've been muddling through the dark with all of the Scorpio type of stuff. We've been accumulating things and we've been picking up little bits and pieces, but maybe we weren't quite sure what we were going to do with it yet, or we couldn't see the path. However, retrograde has come, things are starting to reconfigure, the new moon comes within this space, and then the sun moves into the space of Jupiter, where there's wisdom, where there's enlightenment. Jupiter's retrograde, so we might be going through a little bit of a revision there as well. We might be looking inward for these answers. We might be reconsidering what Jupiter's been doing in the sign of Cancer, the growth and the proliferation and the care that Jupiter has been giving us here. So yeah, happy birthday to all of our Sagittarius sons that are out there. I have some very lovely Sagittariuses that are in my life, and they're a very, very bright light there. So Friday into Saturday. Saturday, Mercury enters back into the space of that Grand Water Trine. So we're going to talk about it a little bit at the end of this week's video. We're going to talk about it at the beginning of next week as well, because Sunday is where Mercury actually makes the trine to Jupiter. Within this reworking process of the retrograde, Mercury coming back into the space through retrograde, wondering what structures can grow from the experience, from what happened within the sign of Sagittarius, right? All of those things that we just talked about with the sun moving into the sign of Sag, Mercury kind of just went through all of that. Now it's moving back into the dark space. It's moving back into the depths. So what experiences did we have in Sagittarius? What knowledge, what information came to us? What has come through that maybe has been a learning process for it? Oh, I can see something now. The signs are there, or maybe they've always been there, but maybe now we're just actually listening to those signs and we're actually taking them in, kind of like that too. But what can be started, what can be initiated, what can grow, what structures and what forms can be put into place. Saturn, the forms that Saturn likes to make are long lasting and they stand the test of time. So what ways can we move that will give us some longevity, give us some stability, feel like we have some structure behind us? Can we structurize our mind, right? Can we set a plan? Can we be focused and determined enough mentally with this trine to Saturn here to really start to put the pieces together to be able to move forward and to create something long-lasting, firm, and something that feels secure, something that makes us feel secure in our beliefs, feel secure in our emotions. We can see that through the sign of Sagittarius and the sign of Scorpio, where all of these things are happening. We can also see that with Jupiter, the ruler of Sag, being in the sign of Cancer, being in the place of emotional security, the place of safety, right? We've talked a lot about creating a safe space and really caring and nurturing for ourselves with Jupiter being in the sign of Cancer. Maybe with Mercury coming back through this Grand Water Trine here and coming back into this space, maybe the flow of water is going to start to change here, right? So maybe there's more water, maybe the flow of water speeds up or slows down a little bit, maybe the clarity changes, maybe there's a little less sediment in the water that is around us, maybe the flow has been dammed up and it's pooling and it's accumulating. Saturn changes those forms, right? And this space of the Grand Water Trine, it's not going to be exact, but Mercury is going to station at like 20 degrees of Scorpio. It's going to come into a conjunction with Venus right around that space. So the change of flow and change of direction with Mercury stationing so close to this Grand Water Trine feels like that change of flow, right? The change of the flow of water. So I know these are physical things that I'm suggesting here as far as like the water, the flow of the water being dammed up, something blocking it and it kind of pools. The water, more water enters whatever the water space is, so now it's flowing faster, or maybe there's been a lack of rain, so now it's moving a little bit slower. Maybe there's clay or mud that's been kicked up. And there's some sediment and the water's not so clear because we've been stepping in it and the sand's been moving around. But you can take these literal actions and these literal things about water and you can think about them symbolically and metaphorically, right? Water accumulates things. So what has been accumulating? Where can you see that maybe there's been a little dust to kick up? Do you need to let the water clear a minute? Do you need to just step back and think? That's a retrograde thing for sure. Yeah, really, really cool things coming through here this week. There's a lot. Take a look at where Scorpio is in your chart because, like I said, there are big resetting moments here coming through here for this. So, yeah, thank you for walking through this week with me. If you've made it this far and you haven't already subscribed, go ahead and do that so we can walk through this astrological journey together. If you've made it through this video, then I'm going to invite you to join our live meditation, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time every Sunday. Really the whole goal with the meditation is creating a space where we can have personal conversations with the astrology. Personal conversations equals personal connections, right? Talk to somebody, you get to know them on a personal level. You get to know a lot more about them. Talk with the planets, talk with the gods and goddesses. You get to know a lot more about them and you get to feel how they are playing out in your own life. And a lot more of a... I was going to say personally satisfying, but that's not quite the word I'm looking for. A personally affirming type way, right? Reaching into our experiences, reaching into our thoughts, and seeing how they're playing out archetypally in the sky around us that's symbolically representing it. It affirms what we're experiencing, right? And it shows us that there's something bigger there's something bigger. There's some sort of bigger plan that is going on here, right? So whatever your beliefs are on that aspect, just come join us, take what works for you, leave the rest. Subscribe here to the channel, join us at our meditation, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, all the things, and I will see you back here next week. Take care, everybody. Happy birthday, Sagittarius, and yeah, happy Scorpio New Moon. Have a great day, everybody.